learned about the Baylor TCU rivalry last year. Obviously, we've
Yeah.
seen it from afar.
Yeah.
Stack it up in some of the big ones you've been a part of. Where does it stay?
I think that historically, it goes back as long as any of them, obviously. I was at Cal, and the Cal-Stanford game was a big game. There was a lot of history in the big game. But yeah, it's up there for sure. I think that, two schools that are pretty like-minded and not that far away from each other, and have a really long history and close history in terms of winning which teams have won the most. It's a pretty even matchup. You just look at the whole thing, and it's you can see why it brings out the passion that it brings out. And so, like I said, I think it was a cool thing that the student government associations for both schools got together and decided to do something to honor it. I think the fact that the Big 12 recognized it as one of the 4 rivalries gives it a ton of credibility. And so anyway, I think it's a big game and something that our players will be excited to play in, and I know it means a lot to our fans and to our players.
On the field, they haven't had the season they wanted to, but what stands out to you about what you've seen on film from them?
Talk about Baylor. They play hard. They're a disciplined football team. Plays with a ton of effort. They play physical. They get after it. They're probably similar to us from the standpoint they just have, had some bad things that have happened. They've had some injuries at the quarterback position and at other positions as well. And so, in today's college football, it's hard to, to win without your best players being available, and I think that's been probably an issue for them this year. But yeah, they're well coached. Dave's teams are always going to be disciplined. They're always going to be well coached. They're always going to play hard. And again, that's what good football teams do, and that's what good coaches bring out in their teams.
Coach, in light of how your defense has played this season, do you still feel good about the scheme?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's what people are going to all over college football. If you look at some of the teams that have been the best in our league defensively, they're playing a similar scheme. I think that's the. I think it works. I think, we're still a little bit young up front. That's when you look at us. You look at guys that we're playing with, and there's a true sophomore and redshirt freshman, and the D line was a rebuild. When we got here, we had 5 scholarship players on our team when we got the job. At the defensive line position, and so it's been add some players here and there to try to build that position, and unfortunately that takes time. And it's in today's transfer world, we brought in some guys that have given us some snaps and have played well. But it's hard to go find a difference maker, that's out there. And that was the one thing Dylan Horton did last year, was, provided a pass rusher and a consistent player. And then, we started Dom last year at the nose tackle position when he was 17 years old. And so, there was, that's been a position that we feel really good about now from a depth standpoint, but those guys are still really young, And that's kind of where that defense starts, is at that position. And we've been inconsistent. I think that's the thing defensively. If you look at at times, we've played really good defense. Look at the second half against Texas. Those are pretty good players. It's supposed to be a first-round quarterback, a first-round running back, 2 first-round wide receivers, a first-round right tackle, or left tackle rather, a high draft pick at tight end. Those are good players. And so, you look at that and you go, yeah, we held that group to 3 points in the second half of a game, and it wasn't good enough for us to win. But, we've played well at times up front and defensively, but we haven't done it consistently well enough.
So for you, is it more about just development?
It is. It's just about getting better. It's like anything else.
Talent. For you, that front 6 isn't about talent necessarily.
Well, it's always. If we had a bunch of 4th or 5th year seniors, and and guys that were draft picks and that kind of thing, and the performance wasn't very good, I'd be concerned, just just like I'm concerned now. I mean, that's the thing about it, is what you do all the time is you try to get better. You try to recruit better players, you try to develop better players, you try to create competition, and you do all those things, and you try to tweak your scheme a little bit to make sure that you stay ahead. You know, I think that's the one thing that you know, even in the last 2 years, there's been a lot of teams that have changed to kind of our style of defense. You know, and it's become a little bit more popular. And so what we have to do is, like anything else, you have to evolve when that happens. You know, it's a little bit like, you know, the air raid. When I was at Texas Tech, we were kind of unique and different. And as more people started to adopt that same way of thinking and playing and plays and formations and practice what habits and all that stuff, you know, you had to try to evolve from there. And I think that's what you have to do on both sides of the ball. Well, I think you have to do it on special teams as well. You gotta try to find ways to be ahead of what everybody else is doing and be difficult to deal with. And you want to be good enough where you can control you know, you're the one that's controlling the action. In other words, you're dictating to the offense what they can do. You know, and I think you have to play an aggressive style of defense. And you know, I think for us, we've done it at times, and we haven't at other times. And I think that's the frustrating thing.
Could you say that Dave over the years has been a defensive guy that's
Yeah, for sure.
out front like that?
Yeah, yeah, very much so. I mean, Dave was kind of, you know, Dave was a simulated pressure 3-down guy. You know, Dick LeBeau, you know, a decade ago, and there was just nobody doing that. And so I think what Dave was doing was really kind of ahead of what everybody else was doing. And then, you know, it was working, and so people started to copy it. And then what happened is, like anything else, then the more the offense sees it, the more comfortable they are playing against it. And that's just the way the evolution of football works. You know, I think, you know, if you watch a college football game now, what used to make college football really unique and different was, you know, you would see a team that was a triple option team, you'd see an high formation team, you would see a team play with 21 personnel, you'd see a team play with 10 personnel. You would see all these different things, and you would see a zone team, and you'd see a team that pulls linemen and you know, does a lot of blocking schemes that way, geared that way. And now what you see is pretty homogenous, this thing where everybody kind of does the same thing in some ways. You know, it almost looks the same when you look across college football now and you look at offenses. It just, you know, it looks pretty homogenous. And it's looking more that way defensively as well.
Are you guys expecting to get Johnny back this season?
No, Johnny will be done for the season. Yeah, unfortunately, I hate that for him. He tried to come back quickly and just didn't work out. You know, Johnny's one of those kids that's he loves his teammates, he loves his team, loves playing football, and I know how disappointed he is to not be able to play the rest of the season. But he'll be back and ready to go next year.
You guys gonna get any of those receivers back, coach, that didn't play last
Maybe Jack, you know, I'm hoping Jack Besh will be back. Rest of the guys, we will not.
They gone for the season too?
Yeah, they are, yeah.
How would you assess your offense under Kendall in this first year?
You know, I think it's been very similar to our defense. You know, I think that at times we've looked really good, we've been very effective, and at other times it's been frustrating. You know, I think the biggest thing for us, when you look at our defense and our offense both, and you compare them to last season, which, I mean, which you would say was a marginally successful season, you look at them and you say, you know, they're not that much different statistically. No. I think going into the Texas game, our offense this year was at more yards per game than last year. Now, you wouldn't know that because the scoring average isn't what it was. We haven't generated as many big plays as we did last year. You know, when you dive into the numbers a little bit, there's some stuff that's pretty eye-opening. I know, again, going into Texas, last season we had 75 scoring plays over 10 yards. This year we had 23. I know going into Texas we had 3 last year we'd had 29. And so, you know, what do you attest that to? I don't know. I mean, that's the thing that we're trying to do. But we had more explosive plays this year, but they had not led to touchdowns. And so, for whatever reason, you know, when you sit down and you look at it and you go, well, okay, you try to study the offense. You know, we're getting more big plays, but they're not resulting in touchdowns. Why is that? You know, I mean, that's what we try to figure out as coaches all the time. And then you start to say, you know, statistically, yards per game and all that stuff, we're not that far off. But the difference is turnovers. You know, you look at the number of turnovers that we have this year, we're I think -7 or 8 in turnovers right now. And that's a big deal. And you look at, you know, and again, you look at our record since we've been here at TCU, we're 17-1 when we win the turnover battle, or we're even. Okay, and you start looking at this year defensively, and you go, okay, well, we lost 4 conference games before the Texas game. We didn't create a turnover in any of those 4 games. And you know, you look at last week against Texas, we created a turnover, but turned it back to them on the same play. And so, you know, you start to look at all those things, and you go, well, I mean, this is what, at the end of the day, this is really what determines winning or losing football games. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure out 17-1 if you win the turnover battle or you're even. And so we've got to figure out a way to do that. And again, that's on us as coaches, is to, you know, do a better job of teaching our guys to not fumble, which we've had very few fumbles this year, but we've thrown a lot of interceptions. And then we have had an issue when it comes to creating turnovers defensively. You know, and why is that? I mean, I think that's you can sit here and debate for hours on what leads to defensive turnovers. You know what I mean? Whether it's, you know, stripping the ball, whether it's creating a consistent pass rush, whether it's getting ahead in games where people have to play behind and are desperate. You know, there's just all these. It's you know, creating more 3rd and long situations. Just you can go through 100 different scenarios, but the bottom line is we have to figure out a way to get some turnovers, and we've got to figure out a way to hold on to the ball. And again, quite simply, if we do that, we're 17-1.
Coach, do you think there's also something there about efficiency, because the challenges that you guys have faced when you get close to the red zone, close to the goal line?
Yeah, there has been. I mean, I think that's been a problem all year. I think that's, again, you look at us last year, we weren't great in red zone offense either, but we had so many big play touchdowns. You know, we didn't have to be, because we didn't run as many plays in the red zone, because we scored from 40 plus out. And so that's kind of, all those things again go together. And but when you sit down and you look at it, our issues in turnover have been, or our issues in the red zone, I think we turned the ball over 9 times, which leads the country. We've had we've had penalties, which we, again, that's a discipline thing, and that's comes down to really one thing and one thing only, and that's coaching. And that's on me. You know, and so you look at those things and you start to go, well, I mean, you know, we have to do better in those situations. And the good thing is the last 2 weeks, we've been much better in the red zone. Okay, the bad thing is that it hasn't led to us winning the ball game. You know, and at the end of the day, that's the most important thing. And as I said last year, I mean, you know, we weren't great in the red zone last year, but we scored 29, 40-plus yard touchdowns. And we've had 3 of those this year. And so, you know, and again, you can say why, and that could be a 2 or 3 hour discussion.
When we talk to Josh, he seems very mature. Seems like he really loves his teammates.
He does, yep.
I'm curious, can you shed a little bit more light on the person he is behind the scenes?
Yeah, I think, you know, I think kind of, you know, focused, mature, humble. You know, I mean, he's kind of what you want your kid to be. You know what I mean? He just works really hard. He's, you know, all he wants is an opportunity. He doesn't want anything given to him. He's got a unique ability to, you know, kind of inspire people, I think. You know, a lot of kids in today's world have a very hard time saying, I made a mistake, you know, and he doesn't have any problem saying that. A lot of adults have a hard time saying, I made a mistake. And so he doesn't mind saying that. You know, he doesn't mind standing in the locker room after the game Saturday and said, hey, look, I shouldn't have thrown that interception at the end of the first half. You know, and say it in front of his teammates. And, you know, not many people can do that. You know what I mean? And so he's unique that way and different. And, you know, I think he's kind of has a pro mentality. You know, he comes in every day, he works hard, he understands the value and importance of relationships and bringing people with him. And I think that's kind of, to me, that's what the great quarterbacks have had an ability to do is you know, they kind of figure out who's important and who can move the needle, and then they have an ability to bring them with them. You know, and I think that's what he does well.
Is it time to, as the game evolves, are there a couple of stats that we all used to look at that we could kind of say aren't as important anymore, like time of possession?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's a million different ways to win. I think that's you know, everybody's, and I think the important thing is that you have a philosophy on how you're going to do it. You know what I'm saying? And it's not just, you know, we want to score one more point than they do. I mean, there's got to be a little bit more of a large philosophy on how are you going to win. You know what I mean? And so, you know, I think about teams that I've had in the past. My second year at La Tech, we were starting a 17-year-old true freshman quarterback, okay? We had the best defense in the league, and we had the best punter in college football, won back-to-back Greg Guy awards. So we kind of sputter along for a number of weeks, you know, trying to ask a young quarterback probably to do things he can't do, and we keep turning the ball over, and you know, and finally we say, why don't we take care of the ball, not turn it over, play cautious football, play really good defense, and punt, and see how that serves us. Okay, well, we won, I think, the last 8 games of the year, maybe the last 9, and won the WAC championship. And probably the worst offense that I've ever coached, okay? But we graduated 10 seniors on the defense. Well, the next year we had the #1 offense in college football, averaged just under 600 yards a game and 51.5 points a game. And so, and we won that way the next year, and we couldn't stop anybody on defense because we were young and we didn't have the personnel. Now we had young guys that were coming, but they weren't there yet. And so it's a great lesson for me just to figure out, and we did that last year. You know what I mean? I think what happened to us last year is we you know, had to adapt to what we had in our talent and what we had at quarterback and what he was really good at, and we built around what we were good at. And I think and our quarterback really flourished in that offense. And we didn't ask him to do things that he wasn't comfortable doing or that he wasn't good at. And so I think that's kind of what you want to get to that point where you say, okay, we want to play complementary football, which again, if you do that, if we'll play off of each other, we're pretty good. I mean, we outscored Texas 20-3 in the second half. Okay, you know, and you can say, well, this or that or this happened or that happened. I mean, but we did. Okay, now the problem was they outscored us by 3 more than that in the first half. You know, but you know, we were down 20, and so we were going to have to. But you know, that's the thing is we played complementary football. We got stops on defense. We stopped them in some critical short yardage situations. We got off the field, and then we sustained drives on offense. And we did it by running the ball and by being patient and not panicking, being down 20 at halftime. So, you know, there's the big thing for us, I think it's like anything else, is right now, you know, we've said, here's what we want to try to do on offense. And for us on offense, we want to be able to run the ball, which we have been spotty doing at times this year, have not been able to run it as well as we want to. And then we got to take care of the ball, which we haven't done that. And so when that happens, you lose 4 one-score games. You know, and then and you're in this room, I'm in this room answering these questions right now instead of, you know, talking about how good we are or how are you guys, whatever over the last 2 years. You know what I mean? Because we got our ass kicked by Kansas State, and we've been in every single game the rest of the year. You know what I mean? And had an opportunity to win. And so, it's not good enough. It's not what anybody wants. But I don't think you look at it, I don't think you go, man, these guys are a universe away from being a competitive football team.
How much, if you had to put a percentage on your offensive inconsistency, how much of it you put on just having a young quarterback who hasn't played very much?
Well, I think that's that's certainly part of it. You don't ever want to just, but it's a new scheme. It's a new, that's where you want to get to as a program where you have continuity. You know what I mean? Where, when we start spring ball, we're going to be light years ahead of where we were last spring. And if you're light years ahead of where you were in the spring, then you typically are going to be light years ahead of where you were in the fall. And that's kind of, I think we will be. You know what I mean? I think that's the idea, is you can't just, because what that does is that keeps your quarterback from having a chance to develop. You know what I mean? And get comfortable and with knowing what he's doing and feeling good about the offense and really knowing the ins and outs of it and just doing all the little nuances that it takes to be good on offense. And so, I think that you've got to be able to, and so you say, okay, well, new coordinator, new quarterback, 3 new guys in the interior and the offensive line, which is really important. I mean, that's like 3 guys in the middle of the offensive line. That's like losing a catcher, a pitcher, and a center fielder in baseball. I mean, you know what I mean? Just because those guys, there's so much that goes on in there. That's been a challenge for us. You know what I'm saying? And so those 3 guys leaving, and then kind of the revolving door at wide receiver that we've had this year with some injuries and that kind of thing. And so, I mean, when you sit down and you look at it all, there's things that we could have done different, things we could have done better. I think that we've got to become more physical up front. And I thought we really played physical in the second half of the game against Texas, against a really good defensive front. So I felt like we took a step in the right direction that way. But I think for us, I mean, that's got to be a trademark of who we are. It can't just be a week-to-week thing or a second half thing or whatever. It's got to be, we have to be a physical, get after it offensive line year in and year out. And you go back and you look at us last year, that's what we did. We wore people down in the second half of games, and it wasn't always pretty. I mean, I came in here every Saturday or every Tuesday last year, and and we won the ball game, but very seldom did we come in here and go, man, we just, we blew those guys out. I mean, that's not what was happening. We were winning because we took care of the ball. We were winning because our quarterback made plays in critical situations. We were winning because we could run the ball when we had to. And right now we've had a hard time doing those things. And at the end of the day, that's kind of what helps you win football games offensively.
We'll go 2 more questions if we have them.
When you say run the ball when you had to, is that one of those situations where everyone knows you're going to do it?
Yeah. I mean, I think that was our situation last year. I mean, it's like, you look at the Michigan game last year. I think we got the ball back with a pretty good amount of time left, and everybody in that stadium knew we were going to run the ball. We had a lead, and we grinded out a couple of first downs. Now we had to punt to Michigan, but there was 40 seconds left or whatever there was, and we were able to go against a good defensive front. I mean, they had a first-round draft pick. I mean, they had a good defensive front. We were able to grind out some first downs and run the clock down, and put our defense in a situation where Michigan didn't have 2 minutes to go. It didn't have 3 timeouts. They had to use timeouts. I didn't think they particularly did a great job handling timeouts, but that's another story. But we had a chance to punt it to them when their back was against the wall, and so that's kind of the way, and that helps you win. You know what I mean? And it doesn't show up in the stat sheet, but that's kind of winning football, and that goes back to what we've talked about this year, and has hurt us has been, we haven't really played winning football, and winning football is because you go back to the Iowa State game, and we turn the ball over 4 times, and we drop a pass at the 2-yard line that we're going to score on. We throw an interception in the end zone, or you go back to Colorado and you throw 2 interceptions in the end zone, and I mean, you just go right through it. You go to West Virginia and you miss 3 field goals, and when you get stopped on a 4th and an inch. I mean, it's just all these things that you know, if you make a play here, make a play there, you win that game. And there's several of those games. And that's, you know, that's how losers talk. And that's, you know, that's not something we're accustomed to talking much about. But that's kind of the reality of it.
Last question?
So I don't know if anybody's asked this, forgive me.
That's okay.
You mentioned the Michigan game. Do you think, and I only read something I think was in the Athletic, that you were aware of what Michigan might have been doing?
Yeah.
Do you think the fact that you were aware of that and could sort of counter what they wanted to do you think that played a role in scoring 51 points and ultimately?
Well, we were lucky. We had 3 weeks. You know what I mean?
So
that
was
was
it 3 weeks or the fact that you knew what
Well-
they might have been trying to do?
Look. I mean, coaches talk. I mean, we gossip more than anybody in the world. And I mean, there's no secrets and no honor among thieves and coaches. And so so, you know, you start calling around and you know, tell us about Michigan, and, you know, a lot of things come up. And so, you know, we had some time to sit and decide, okay, how are we going to handle this? Where if you're playing them in the regular season, that's much more difficult to do in 5 days than it is to have, you know, 21 days to think of a plan and to be able to change signals, learn signals, dummy call stuff, whatever it is you're going to do, whatever course of action you choose to take. You know, and look, I mean, everybody, you know, my guess is probably a little less than half of college football spends 100 hours a week on signals, maybe more. You know, that's never been my thing. You know, just a lot of it has to do with who you came up with and what's the philosophy, and we're different. I mean, you know, Joe holds his calls till very late. You know, I remember it was just like when you would play Coach Patterson when he was the head coach here. You know, he signaled stuff in really late. He wanted to see the formation and the personnel, and so, you know, it was kind of a waste of time to try to steal their signals to an extent. And Gary never changed them, you know, and most guys don't. Garrett Riley never changed his. You know, I can still watch USC play pretty much every week and know every play they're calling. You know what I mean? And that's, Mike Leach never changed his. You know, it's just, and so, you know, but again, there's a way to get around that. You know what I mean? There's Lincoln calls, the same thing. Lincoln signals it in, they go fast, and, you know, it doesn't matter what if the coach knows the play, it only matters if the players know the play. And so, you know, that the coach has to know it, the coach has to be able to relay it to the players, and then you have to decide at that point, is the juice worth the squeeze? You know, is it, you know, are they getting it late? Are they getting checks communicated? Okay, then you're going to motion. I mean, just all these things that you can do to create havoc when it comes to that. And so, anyway, getting back to the question, we had a long time to prepare, and we felt like we had some answers. I mean, I can assure you there were plenty of plays in the Michigan game where they knew exactly what we were running. You know, but I can assure you there's been plenty of other plays in games we've run this year where the defense has known exactly what we're running. I mean, it's just kind of the nature of this business sometimes.
Thanks, Coach.
Thank you.
Okay.